There's no difference. I mean, a Panzeros looks like every other house, but if it's done well. You walk in, the only thing you don't notice is you don't have radiators, and you don't have like ductwork all over the place. So it's the things you don't have that you might not notice because you don't think to look, but it's really how quiet they are.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. Today I'm joined by Michael Ingui, a New York-based architect. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can ask questions, leave feedback there too. Michael Ingui, thank you so much for being on the show. It is a pleasure to talk to you again.
My pleasure. Nice seeing you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. So can you start off by telling folks where you live?
Great. So I live in Brooklyn, New York. The office is in downtown Manhattan, about a 15 to 20-minute bike ride right over the Brooklyn Bridge.
So I can tell you back in February, I remember one of your places being one of the epicenters of the early COVID-19 outbreak. How's that been?
It's been pretty rough. I think we've gotten a lot better at dealing with it in New York, and I think that it's calmed down a lot, which has also been really helpful. But it's been pretty intense here. There was a time when I'd ride to work over the bridge. I'd be the only one on the bridge. It was empty for good reason. I'd go into my building. I'd be the only one in the building. I'm in a 14-story building, so it was odd and for a lot of people pretty painful.
Are more people on the streets? Are more people going to offices now?
Yeah, there's definitely more on the street, definitely more in the offices. I'd say the subway feels half full. I'm still on the bike a lot, and for better or worse, I really like it with the Brooklyn Bridge empty. So
I bet you do.
I do, and I feel horrible saying it, but I really, really do. So it's a 15-minute bike ride versus a 24-minute bike ride. So it's a big difference.
It's got to be more leisurely and enjoyable too, right?
Yeah, but there's more people on the bridges, more tourists. I mean, the holiday week was pretty bananas here. I mean, Rock Center was still Rock Center, crowded all over the place. So for better or worse, they're back. Maybe not as much as people should be, but they're back.
We were talking a little bit before the show. I'm sure this has had a great impact on how you do business. Can you talk a little bit about how you're dealing with clients and running an architectural firm?
Yeah, we were pretty lucky. We had a lot of projects in design, and we shut the office down 2 weeks before they asked us to shut it down, just because you can kind of see it coming, and it felt unsafe. We have a lot of people in the office who are dying to work at home, so it's funny how much they don't want to work at home anymore. But
really, you probably have a mix, right? Some folks.
It depends on your commute. So we have a lot of young people who are sharing apartments or don't love their work set up at home or can't concentrate because of family life, and they want to be at the office. So right now we're half in, half out. But it forced everyone to learn a whole bunch of things that they would have had to learn over a very long period of time. And we do design meetings over Zoom. I mean, great example. We just did a site meeting where I was with the contractor. We're going through design items. The interior designer who works with us in our office, Lissy, was in the office, but on her screen. And every time we were talking about something, she's like, "Oh yeah, great!" And she pulls up a sample onto her screen. And then Frankie, who was out in Long Island at the time, was on Zoom, and he's like sketching what we're doing. He's like, "Yeah, so like this," and he's sharing the screen. And that level of interactivity while I'm on the site with a contractor, and we're both just looking at my iPhone, it's pretty incredible. And it really streamlined. Well, before that, it would have been the meeting. Lizzie and Frankie probably would have been there. Then we would have gone back. So it's actually, for better or worse, you learn the tricks of the trade, and I don't think we're going to forget them.
I'm sure you're right. So how have clients dealt with the new reality? I mean, there's little we can do about this, but have they been accepting of a new way to do architectural work?
I think, well, especially the new clients who didn't know what we did prior, yes. But even the clients who did, some of the apps and some of the drawing tools that you can do while you're on Zoom, they make a design meeting really good, and everyone's focused and nobody's in a rush and they don't have the commuting time anymore. So it's actually been I mean, I hate saying it because I like in-person situations. I'm a one-on-one person. I like that. I like that level of
Oh, and
interactivity.
you're charming and gregarious, I would add, you know.
But I have to tell you, I mean, people are more accepting of it than I want them to be. It's really the answer.
Can you talk a little bit about your architectural practice? You're in partner with another architect. How many folks work there? What kind of projects you do? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I am partners with Ben Baxt, who I think is 76 this year. He's definitely been practicing for over 40 years. I've been with him since
Ever.
yeah, forever. Let's say 5 years, but but I've been his partner since 2001, so it's more than 5 years. And for the most part, we hire people out of school, and we try to keep them forever. We like it when they want to set up their practices in the office versus outside the office. So we're about 25 people now. We work in teams, and some of the PMs who work for us, I mean, they've just taken the level of collaborativeness that Ben has really fostered to a whole new level, and a whole bunch of really creative souls in the office. It's a fun environment.
Are your project managers typically younger architects, or does that take a while to get the chops to do that job?
I think it takes a little bit of time. So we have a pretty good crew. So really, in the first 3 to 6 months, if you can't keep up with the project manager you're working with, you're probably not going to last. And it's a crew that's really talented. They work well with others. And they're good implementers and communicators while being creative. It's kind of a hard mix.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times within the year or two or three, when you're working with one of these project managers and with me or with Ben, you're getting all this experience. And a lot of times it just all blends, who's a project manager versus who's support versus, everybody's managing, everybody's designing in our office. Everyone who wants to design can. I mean, Ben set it up that way a long time ago. And we work with our contractors that way too. I mean, everybody's designing. If you have the ability to speak and to sketch something, you're designing with us. So it's a nice setup. But in terms of like being a product manager, I'd say it takes 4 years, 5 years, 6 years to really get to that place. And then depending on the level of product manager is just how much time I'm with them on site. Some of our product managers, I mean, if I wasn't there for 3 months, they wouldn't care. I would, because I'd want
You want
to
to see what's going on, I'm sure.
Projects are fun.
Yeah.
But some of them, I'm there every week. It kind of depends on the person.
And the project, I'm sure, different complexity levels are going
True.
to, involve different things. Can you tell me, where did you go to school? And did you always want to be an architect, or is this something that came to you when you were going through academia?
So I went to school out in Old Westbury, and I grew up out in Long Island in Bethpage. But I went to school at New York Tech in Old Westbury. And in fact, we got a bunch of I'd say, so my partner Ben went to Michigan. I went to New York Tech and Old Westbury, and we've got great connections at both schools. So a lot of the people who are working with us also come from those schools, because we get sent, it's that phone call you get, hey, I don't know if you have to fire someone, but hire this person.
You're very lucky to have those kind of connections to get the good students.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been really, really nice. So I wanted to be an architect. I mean, ever since I was quite little, and I love building and love designing. At some point, art found its way to me, and I've been painting and drawing ever since. At some point, I was thinking about going to art school, but I realized I could be an artist while I was an architect, and not vice versa. So went to school for architecture, and the school at New York Tech, the art building was right there, so was able to do both. In fact, I took a year off of architecture just to focus on art for a little bit, and it's been fun. For me, it's a great combo. I'm not good at doing one thing at once, and then the art keeps you creative, which is nice.
Did you have someone growing up to influence you in this path? Like, you have to learn about something before you can want to do it, I would argue.
Yeah, so I mean, my father was a teacher, but built a little bit. My grandfather loved to build on the side, so we were always kind of building something. But for the most part, I don't know. I just loved looking at buildings and going through buildings and figuring out how they were built and what was wrong. And I like problems, so it's always kind of fun to see what was happening. So.
Growing up on Long Island, you would have a little more space, I would argue, around you than you do now. It's still a busy place, but how did you end up in the city? And would you've chosen a different path given how COVID-19 has turned out?
So true. Yeah. So even as a kid, I mean, when you grow up this close to New York City, you're in New York City all the time. So the energy and the creativeness that comes with being in the city. I knew I'd be here. I looked for a job quite early, right out of school, to come into the city. And I've been really lucky to live in Brooklyn. There's so much that's happened over the last 10, 20 years in Brooklyn. There's so many artisans and people doing creative startups and so many interesting things and maker spaces. And so the energy here is really incredible. And then when COVID hit, quite honestly, I have two 16-year-old boys. They chose, we have a house out in Long Island as well, kind of a fun, like 1969 kit house that someone literally bought out of a catalog. Which,
Neat.
Has its issues, but it's small and it's what we want. And but they chose to be here, not there, and which says something as well. We have a stoop, and sometimes what happens, the kids can hang out there, kind of social distance, and they can still see their friends. But I didn't mind being in Brooklyn during COVID. I didn't mind being in the city, as long as you were crazy careful. And we found that people, at least where we were in Brooklyn and where I was in downtown Manhattan, people were being maybe more careful here than in other places that we were. So we actually felt pretty good.
It's something I could have never imagined a year ago. And like you said, how quickly things have had to change. And
yeah, so true.
I know you and I have been introduced because you were a huge fan of the Passive House Performance Standard, and you were have the credentials from the Passive House US, right, to design projects. How were you introduced to this program or this standard, and what's appealing to you about it?
So I did a project right next to Sam McAfee, great contractor who then became a Passive House consultant and is now working with Zola. But I did a project next to Sam and had very little mechanical. It performed well. It was incredible. I was done. I was in. Our house had all these mechanicals, all this stuff, and just the amount of stuff we were putting in our house versus what he was putting in his house. So we hired Sam. And he worked on the next 4 or 5 projects. It was great to have a contractor on board. We've had a contractor, Bob Hellenius, who was a GC for 30 years, who's on staff now, God, for way over 10 years. So we like having contractors kind of within the office. And it's a great way to get into Passive House because it's really more as much for the builder and as it is for anybody else. And
it's more complicating for the builder, I would argue, than others, stakeholders, right?
Yeah. So the builder's either on board or you're not doing a Passive House.
Or it's not going to work.
Yeah. But it's been a good ride. I'm actually certified through PHI in Germany versus VS. There just happens to be more PHI folks in New York. And also, I do a lot of retrofits, and it's a little easier or simpler to get them certified through that when you do retrofit projects.
Can you talk about your typical retrofit project, or maybe they're not typical?
Yeah, well, they are and they're not. So, I'll say this: my first Passive House was fun, and I'm happy.
And you live in it.
No, actually, no. The one I first did, thank God, was not the first one. The first one was tough. It was rough. It was it passed. And it's LEED Platinum, and it's in Manhattan, so it's got all these great things about it. And we restored the whole front facade. It's in a landmark district, but it was rough. It's a way that we had a client who wanted it no matter what, and he was really, honestly, part of the team. We looked for problems in that house for months before, literally 2 or 3 months before we could really certify. It's the poster child of how things will never actually scale. But that client actually stayed with us afterwards into multiple projects and actually has been pretty involved with the Passive House community with us. And since then, we've developed a systematic approach to Passive House, which is so much better. And we realized we learned from that. And we worked actually pretty closely with our contractors. We do a contractor collective where they all meet with us once a month with each other too, a competing contractors meeting. And we've gone through the systems and the way we do it. And it went from taking 2 or 3 months longer, which nobody's really going to do, to taking a couple of days longer, maybe a week longer, maybe 2 or 3 weeks longer tops on these size houses. And the types of projects we do are difficult because they're historic. We're in landmark districts. They're masonry buildings, so it's a townhouse or a brownstone. and they're in landmark districts, so we can't do a lot of it on the outside. In fact, you walk into the houses, you can't tell they're a passive house. So it's not like we can put a blanket over it or do something else. It's got to all be through kind of better details and better construction. So
And you have
creating
shared walls, which is complicating, right?
yeah. So party walls and extensions here, but not there, and all sorts of like fun and difficult details. So creating the systematic approach, it's key. It's key no matter where anybody is for doing this, and it's really brought it to a place where it's not quite cost neutral, but it's close, like really close, and close enough where every project we do now that's a full gut project, it's a passive house, and every project where it's not a full gut still has passive house windows or a passive house roof or whatever we are touching. We take what we've learned. It's just better construction. I mean, passive house at the end of the day, that's
I
what it
guess
is.
that's what I was going to say. And you adopt these on all the things on all your projects because you think it builds a better house, I'm guessing.
That's the only reason. I mean, it's passive house is really just a grouping of great details. That's all it really is. It's a better slab detail that doesn't let the moisture up. It's a better liquid applied. On our case, on the party walls, masonry party walls, it's a liquid applied treatment that doesn't let bugs and dust and other things through.
And the neighbor's cigarette smoke or whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, all these things everybody wants, and it makes a much better project. So for me, at the end of the day, when you do enough of these, you've got a passive house. So that's really all there is for me.
It was very illustrative when I toured your home. You were nice enough to show some of the Taunton staffers around your place. And you showed how effective your passive house windows were at stopping noise, which really matters when you're in New York City, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, my bedroom's in the front. I don't hear the garbage truck. It's strange. And that's why having people go into a passive house and just experiencing that, because it's hard to tell, especially I mean, especially if you do them well. I mean, there's no difference. I mean, a passive house looks like every other house if it's done well. You walk in, the only thing you don't notice is you don't have radiators and you don't have like ductwork all over the place. So it's the things you don't have that you might not notice because you don't think to look, but it's really how quiet they are. It is serene. It's nice.
It's nice. It's a refuge, right? In a loud place.
Yeah.
The difficulty building in your Brooklyn neighborhood would challenge even the most experienced residential GCs or project managers, I would say, who are unaccustomed to working in an urban environment. Site access for deliveries, parking, city red tape, neighbors, traffic, these things that people who build in farm fields don't need to worry about, right? Can you try to explain some of the things that you and your GCs have to deal with when working in New York City?
Yeah, I mean, so we do a lot of work out of the city as well as in, and everybody has their own issues they've got to deal with, no matter where they are. But in New York City, it's tough. I mean, there's simple things like you can't find parking any day, every day, or you can't put a dumpster outside, or even when you try to get the garbage out, and the truck is there and you're paying per load. The police will make them circle the block so they can move the traffic. I mean, how much does that start to cost with trash removal? Or just the proximity to neighbors by themselves and how much all of these homes have increased in value. So what happens is you have a lot of very protective people right next to each other. So I think a lot of the contractors, and it's the reason why sometimes it's double the price to do work here than it is really 30 minutes away. And there's lots of money to be made for the contractors who get it right. And we work with a bunch of people who, they do this now. So what seemingly so effortlessly, they will laugh when they hear me say that. It's not,
Right.
it's not effortless, but it seems effortless. And if they can do it, there's a lot of great money to be made doing it. There's also a lot of money to be lost if you don't take it into consideration. The fact that you're getting tickets, you're getting towed, that delivery you thought you were getting with, actually, it really has happened. We got 7,000 pounds of windows delivered, and they had to carry them down the block because there was no place to put the truck. So that contractor knew it, was ready for it, and had like 15 or 20 people ready to go and dollies and set up. Well, if you weren't, I don't know what you would do. It's pretty amazing. So it's the contractors who have really gotten used to it, and I'm friends with most of the contractors, and as I put it to them, it'd be pretty hard pressed to make me a general contractor. I mean, nothing in their day goes the way they think it's going to go,
I don't know how
and
those guys sleep, except that it must be just completely exhausting doing that every day.
and I think some of them are just really good at continuously bobbing and weaving and making things happen. And yeah, that day didn't go the way they thought it would. But not only are they kind of talented craftsmen, and not only do they know how to do beautiful projects, but they've got that level of logistical, like dancing down, and that's really what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just continuously just solving whatever problem comes to them. And some of them are really, really good at it.
I think for those guys who are good at it, that's the best part of the job. It's,
Hmm.
succeeding.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about it before, but for the benefit of our audience, do you think the architecture programs in this country are doing a good job training people to become architects?
It's a great question. And it's interesting. I think that I was lucky at New York Tech because they have a dual program. So it's not only just a design program, but they also talk about mechanicals and construction for the 4-year degree as well. And so you get to take both courses. And having some level of practical training is helpful, but it's still not enough. And then in terms of passive house and just high performance building, actually, we just did on the accelerator, we just did a survey and of all the different things that would really move the needle in high performance building community, and education was number one. I mean, across the board, there wasn't even anything that hit close to it, and it was actually early education, like high school. You've got a lot of smart kids in this whole generation that's coming up. They're so intent on change, and they've got so much energy and anger in the belly, which is great. And we can actually give them the tools to make the change. Great, you want to march? Okay, but also here's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
We know the answers, and these are things that can't be unlearned, and they're not too young to learn. I mean, I've got two 16-year-olds. I mean, one works for the accelerator now, and one of them got passive certified because he was so excited that there was actually potentially an answer. I think these kids, they want to learn. And so going straight from high school to college, you teach them young, and these are lessons that aren't easily unlearned. So I really feel like they could, I mean, I think it's a huge, huge opportunity. And you've got a generation that I think is really hungry for it.
You mentioned the Passive House Accelerator twice now. You should tell folks who aren't familiar with what that is, what you're doing with that program, if you would, please.
Yeah, so thanks. So the Panzeros Accelerator is something I founded a couple of years ago, and I was doing okay, but then Zach Semke took over and has been running it since. It's doing much better now. And
Mm-hmm.
and so what it is it's really it's a website that also does a whole bunch of live programming now that unifies the entire passive house and high performance community. And a lot of its first thing it does is just tell everybody who may not know where to go to look for things. So a great example, since the beginning, every Fine Homebuilding and Green Building Advisor and article that has ever had to do with passive house, we send people to those. They're interesting. Same thing with passive house buildings, passive house plus buildings in London, who we were really close with. Which send people to the articles that are already happening. So much good content. I mean, Green Building Advisor's detailed catalog by itself is just like, once you realize that exists, it's like, wow. That's one thing. And then the other thing it's doing is it's taking the community that has all this knowledge, putting them together, both in articles, or now we're doing these Tuesday night programs with we're doing Technical Tuesday on Tuesday nights that's contractor centric, and Wednesday nights Global Passive House Happy Hour, which is kind of architect centric. I mean, having said that, both go to both. And
So you have to send me
together.
invites to those, if you would, please.
I'm sorry?
You have to send me invites to those. I want to go to both of those.
Yeah, they're fun. They're fun, and they're great. We stay away from Thursdays because we almost all of us go to Michael Main's BS and beer. So which is, it's kind of fun. I mean, so COVID has been horrible in so many ways, but I have to say, like, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights have been kind of, and I feel horrible saying it, but it's been great. I mean, in all these different programs, they're just bringing people together who wouldn't have been together otherwise. And with every topic that's on these, everybody's learning so much. I
Hmm.
mean, just the stuff that's in the chat sometimes is just you're constantly typing things into the Google while everybody's talking, and it's fun. So it's been kind of fun to see that develop. So the accelerator has really been a fun outlet for me as well. It's been nice.
So, what are some of the things that you try and teach contractors in that Tuesday night session?
So the Tuesday night session has been kind of interesting because what I think people felt like with the Wednesday night session is that we talked about the projects, we talked about how to get them certified, the mechanicals, but it was really the nuts and bolts about how things go together. Like the first one was this window in this skylight installation thing where I mean these god awful heavy Panzeros skylights and how it's been flashed and how it's been detailed, from a contractor's perspective and how they're doing it. And there's so many contractors doing great work, as you guys know. I mean, I've been addicted to fine home building since I was young, and it's a place for them to kind of really compare notes, and it's very similar to the contractor collective that I think you were at one in Brooklyn, where it's the competing contractors in one location who might not want to talk typically, but actually for some reason in the high performance building community are dying to talk to each other and give up all their secrets and share all their secrets. So it's been really fun. So the Tuesday session is actually kind of taken a life of its own, and it's been really really good. It's been fun.
What's the next topic of discussion for? Well,
Um,
this will be recorded and aired later, but what are you talking about tonight?
Adam Romano is going to be on. He works with Stephen Winters, and he's going to be talking about a whole bunch of different things. But what's great about Adam is the person who used to work at AEA, Association for Energy Affordability. Can't believe I remembered it. And he did contractor training with Kevin Brennan. So a lot of the contractors who have been Passive House trained and certified have been through Adam. So he sees it through a whole different lens. And so he's talking tonight, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds valuable.
It's fun. It's fun to kind of hear it from his perspective because he sees what I'm doing wrong. He sees what the contractors are doing wrong. So it's been kind of fun.
Can you talk a little bit about your own personal aesthetic, either architecture or more broadly? What
Mhm.
are your favorite residential and commercial buildings in New York City, for example?
So we're really lucky in our office. We're right across from St. Paul's Church, so I kind of see that. And while I'm looking at that, I can actually see the Oculus, which is also kind of fun. And we're right around the corner from the Woolworth Building, so we're around a lot of really great icons. I ride over the Brooklyn Bridge every day. So
Yeah.
downtown Manhattan, it's one of the things I like about it. And I guess just to talk a little bit about my aesthetic, I mean, I'm definitely I have a more modern aesthetic and kind of clean but warm. I like how things go together,
Mm.
and I like seeing that. But I also really like all the cool historic stuff that we have here, and I like putting them together. I like that juxtaposition. In a lot of our projects, we actually do that, and I kind of feel like even from my office window, we've got that juxtaposition of kind of the really cool Calatrava Oculus right next to St. Paul's Church, and it's kind of a fun element where nothing's really quote unquote kind of fake. It's all just the Oculus is new. It's modern. It's an insertion, and it's a lot of fun. So we're really I feel like we're lucky with where we're located.
Have you traveled to see notable architectural buildings or ruins? Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
I think we especially pre-COVID, it was we went to Italy, we've been to France, and a whole bunch of other cities. But it's having the boys, see this as they grow up, and having them kind of attempting to have them see it kind of through my eyes to a certain extent, and also. I mean, just walking through so many of these beautiful historic places, and I've been to Germany a whole number of times and seen a lot of Le Corbusier, and then here you've got some beautiful con buildings. There's just a lot of really good stuff you can learn, and I feel like you can learn from all these buildings in some way. You're in the building, you see the decisions that were made, you can kind of see the proportions, you see the things they didn't do, and you think about the project you did, and like, wow, I could have done that. And it doesn't matter how old the building is, you still see, or sometimes how ornamental it is. You can see past that and see, well, they still followed those proportions, and it reminds you of the decisions you could be making. It's really nice. It's fun.
So here's a tough one for you. What can builders be doing to make the architect's life easier, and what should architects be doing to make the builders' lives easier or better?
I could spend the whole podcast on this.
I know it's
I dwell on this all the time. I do.
You seem to be a poster boy for making this relationship work, in my experience.
Thank you. I continuously try to do what we do better every day and pick it apart. Maybe too much. It can be annoying sometimes, and same with the contractors. And I would say, kind of single sentence: work as a team and communicate. Over communicate, work as a team and over communicate, and if you did nothing besides that, but we know in our office we bring them in early. I don't really believe necessarily in perfect design build. I like it when we're separate. I don't know that there's a real reason for it anyway. We get to work with more builders if we're not just design build, because I like working with a variety of people. We're kind of lucky to have all these great artisans near us, but we bring them in right up to schematic design. We have so we don't do a bid set at the end. That's kind of a waste. We do a budget set, and we have 4 contractors provide us pricing at budget. And what happens after that is, once you select a contractor from that, which won't be just based on price, because very often we're kind of averaging all 4, and it's based on kind of fit and the right team. And we're able to develop the sets with them. So it's with their mechanical sub, it's with their framing sub. If they want to do plywood on the wall versus Intello or some other item, they get to choose. If they like Fujitsu versus Mitsubishi, they get to choose. And it's their project as much as ours. We're showing this cool curved ceiling that we think is the best thing in the world. And they're like, oh, Mike, but it doesn't fit. It's so many things that come up that are just so helpful, and it's happening in the design realm, and you could see the whole team gets excited, including the client. And so I would say bring them in early and over communicate. There's a lot of different things I could go on and on about it, but I won't.
So what should builders be doing to make your life easier with your clients and your making a living?
I feel like the same over communicate would be that, and remember what your strengths are. I mean, a lot of these builders got into building because they love building, so and I think a lot of them get hurt on schedule. Again, that would be my silver bullet. The schedule is your friend. Create a Gantt chart, create a schedule. When there's a change order, put in the date for that change order as well as a new completion date, and update the schedule every month. It means that you'll get paid, which is so nice. I pick apart a lot of contractors because I see behind the curtain all the time, and the ones who are happy are the ones who follow that simple rule, which seems like a lot of paperwork, but if you're doing it all the time, it's not, and it means that it doesn't matter how many change orders there are, how many changes there are, you're still being paid, and you're being paid for the craft that you worked really hard, and very often harder than everybody else is working to make happen. And so I would say over communicate even on that front. Because I think a lot of them, they do great work. So it's just the communication on both the architect and the contractor.
We talked a little bit about it earlier, but can you tell me about your own house?
Yeah, so I live in a house that was built in like the 1900s, early 1900s, and has had a lot of life. We called it Muggsy's house when we first got it because it had urine stains all over the parlor floor ceiling. It had a dog that had been going to the bathroom for almost a year above it, and the floors were gone, the joists were gone, the ceiling was gone. My wife's like, "Stop smiling," and I was like, I'm so happy, because after demo, it's gone. But everybody else, people would walk right back out the house, and so we got it at a great price. It let us do this really fun passive house. My brother-in-law, Max Michel, was my contractor. A lot of my friends, Donato was a plumber. The stair builder was a friend. My house may have taken a little longer because of that. I waited for 4 projects to finish before the stair builder could come here. Because they're my projects, so how do I not? But it was a lot of fun. I have to say, I really enjoyed everybody who worked in the house with us, and it's all electric. So that means, and we've been testing a lot of things, like I can leave the breakers off my heat all winter to see really how cold will it get. And answer is 67 degrees, which is bananas. But it stayed 67 for like 3 days, which doesn't seem cold, but 3 days at 67, I probably could have put the heat on. But 67 with no heat in New York City with the breakers off. But there are things you can kind of test out when it's your own house. So it's been that's been a lot.
And we should tell folks it's a Brooklyn brownstone. It's
Yeah,
all the homes on your street are virtually the same as far as I could tell
yeah,
on the outside.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah. A townhouse with a one-story addition at the top, all masonry, with and it's so it's passive. It should be passive plus, but I haven't put my solar on yet. And it's all electric, which means we went with a heat pump hot water heater, which has been working great. We went with a heat pump dryer, which has also been working great. And A heat pump range, which was my scariest thing ever because
What's that? I don't think I've ever even heard of that.
well, no, not a heat pump range. Sorry, induction range. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You were like,
Because you're a
wow,
cook.
where do I get one of those? I'm not, but more importantly, my wife is, and
Yeah.
I had to make sure she'd be good with going away from gas, and she loves it, thankfully. So it's been nice. I clean.
Good for you. So tell me, would you do anything different if you had to do this project again? How long have you been living there?
So we've been here 4 years. I think that we are doing a few things differently. One is I got a little too excited about not having to need heat, and so with passive house windows, which by the way, if you're buying custom windows anyway from any manufacturer, aren't more expensive. They're the same price. But what's cool about them is you can actually spec the level of lamination and treatment of the glass. And I got a little too excited about the fact that you could have a house in New York City without heating, so there's no treatment on the glass, and which is
So
why
it's hot in the summer?
so it's a little hot. I mean, if you shade it right, it's not hot in the summer,
Mhm.
and we have enough cooling to handle it. But what I've learned and what we've learned as an office over the years is that with passive house, you've got the heat down. You're going to have to. I mean, we've done 8 houses now that are certified. We're working on 14 buildings right now that are all going to be certified. So we really have a setup of like what people like, what they don't. We've realized that you never heat. You're never going to need to heat the houses. I mean, you're going to need to heat the house 3 or 4 days a year. Which, by the way, I mean, to think that you can have a house in New York that you're not heating is bananas. It's a game changer because then you could just do it all through the heat pump. But what we learned is that really, once you get that down, it's all about the cooling. It
Mm.
really is. So getting your shading right so that the sun doesn't make it in when you don't want it to make it in, but it does in the winter. I
Mhm.
mean, it's kind of simple tricks that my partner was doing 40 years ago.
Yeah, these are
Um,
like passive solar techniques from the 70s, right?
they really are. So just like remembering them, and then also it lets you do some cool details on the outside, some fun things that you would do, or just getting keeping that sun out, and maybe not getting so excited about maybe needing to put the heat on for 14 days versus no days, because you could really overheat some of these houses if you don't get it right. So that's one thing, but otherwise, no, there's really even that. Honestly, we just open the doors. I mean, we have the nice thing about the passive house products is, especially some of these doors, you've got these nice, great big sliding doors. So that we use, actually, we use a lot of our passive products on our non-passive houses, just because we can't get doors that big otherwise.
Hmm.
So you've got this great indoor-outdoor experience. So we'll just open the door if it's hot. So I'm even that. There are very few things I would do differently, but yeah, shading is always one.
How about your boys? Do they like the place?
They do, yeah. It's been nice, and it's been fun for them to kind of experience it. We lived in a few different houses before this, and I think it really affects them. And it's so quiet and it's comfortable, and it's like one of those things that it's hard not to learn the lessons and kind of wonder how it got there.
So what's your next house going to be? Are you going to stay in here forever, or are you going to work on your little weekend place on Long Island and make it a passive house, for example?
No, that'll always be a 3-season house. But I mean, it could, but it'd be better to come down and go back up. So no, I think we'll stay here for a while. We like it here quite a bit, and the office has got a lot of kind of fun projects. The office is working on right now a firehouse in Manhattan, where the top 4 floors will be residential, and the bottom floor will be community facility. We're working on, for us, kind of a fun project up state where we're doing in Highland, where we're doing Highland Passive House, where it's a mixed use building, which is all prefab, which is fun for us. So, and then for us, we do a lot of these masonry retrofits, but out in Long Island, we're doing a retrofit of a typical ranch house, which for
Mm.
us is really fun. It's a typical 2x4 house with a 2-foot crawl space. with a client who wants it to be passive, and we're going to retrofit that house. And
Cool.
so that one, I mean, it's actually not our largest project, but for the office, it's a lot of fun to kind of take all these kind of systematic approaches that we're doing and seeing how it works with that.
It seems like for the program to make a real difference, we need to get it more mainstream. I think you'd agree. And that sounds like the kind of house that is everywhere in America.
Yeah, that's why we're so excited about it. It's and we're working with John Mitchell and Ed May from Building Type on it, and they're also into it. And we're like, what if you did this or that? And it's fun because I do agree. It's one we're already sharing how we do the masonry retrofits, and there's a bunch of them in lots of different cities, in Boston and Philly and so forth. But there's a lot of the houses that we're about to do, I mean, all throughout the country. And I think there are some. Hopefully, there'll be some really good, easy lessons that we learn that we could share as well. And there's a bunch of people. It's funny. We're not starting at zero. There's a whole bunch of people, and that actually, and both I'm Green Building Advisor and Fine Homebuilding have articles on it that have let us start at like 50% versus zero. I think that's like one of the reminders. We're not starting that building at zero. There's a whole bunch of people who've done it, a whole bunch of articles and details that are out there. So you get to start at 50 and kind of tweak it from there, which I think, again, makes it possible.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Michael. Is there anything you want to ask or tell our listeners before we part company?
No, I mean, I think if there's anything I didn't get to, they can feel free to reach out.
How about your architectural firm's web address?
Good point. Yeah. So it's www.baxtingui.com. So it's BAXTINGUI.com.
And you do more than passive house. Let's just be clear about that, right?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I would say only 50% of what we do is probably passive house. So we do apartments. We do lots of other things. I mean, a great way to put it, I mean, a lot of houses should not be gutted. They're beautiful. So we just do better building wherever we can. And so, yeah, we do a lot of different types of things. Yeah.
Well, hopefully someday you'll be able to design my passive house. We'll talk about that after the show.
Sounds good. That'd be great. Thank you.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Michael Ingui for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Michael, thanks a lot for joining me. Thanks to all of you for listening. Be safe, keep craft alive, and happy building.